Welcome to Influential Entrepreneurs, bringing you interviews with elite business leaders and experts, sharing tips and strategies for elevating your business to the next level. Here's your host, Mike Saunders.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Influential Entrepreneurs. This is Mike Saunders with Marketing Huddle, and today we have with us David Dyer, who is the co-founder and CEO of Manifesto Agency. Welcome to the program, David.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. So this is another interview in our series focusing on some recent Inc. 5000 recipient winners. And so first of all, congratulations for that designation, because not everyone can get that. And as we all know, it's not one of those things you get from your local chamber that says, you know, congratulations, you won the whatever of the year, and they just are trying to sell you a trophy. This is the real deal, financials verified, and Inc. 5000. So tell us a little bit about that recognition, what that meant to you guys, and was this your first year, or is this now multiple years?
No, yeah, this is our first year being recognized, and I think obviously it was humbling and exciting to us as an organization. I think when you start a company, you have an idea maybe of the North Star and horizon you're setting for, but I think, just achieving some of those milestones, you're so heads down in the work. And so oftentimes when you pop up for air, you start to look back and realize, wow, like we have come a long way. We have met some of the milestones we set off to achieve. So I think for us, it was just exciting, humbling, and felt for the first time, an opportunity to have to gain some more national recognition and potentially even play at a different level.
Yeah, I'm sure you didn't set out 2, 3, 4 years ago to make the list, but that is one of the spoils of war, so to speak. And it really is neat where you gave a word picture that I think is really powerful in a business sense, which is, you've got your head down just working. And then you look up and it's like, oh, yeah, we did make this. And it's kind of like if you ever saw that, did you ever see that movie Facing the Giants?
Indeed, yeah.
There's that scene where the coach gets one player down on his hands and knees, actually his hands and feet, not even your knees, and gets another player laying on his back, and he's like, blindfolds him, and he goes, I want you to get to the 50-yard line. He's like, oh, my word, I can't go more than 10 feet. And he starts going, and the coach is right there yelling, you can do it, you can do it. And finally he's like, about to give up, and he collapses, and he's like, did I make the 50-yard line? He's like, dude, you're in the end zone. And the point is we can push ourselves a lot farther than we think. And to your point, when you do the right things the right way for long enough and you got your head down doing the right things, good things happen.
Indeed.
What would you say some of your main lessons that you learned during that time of kind of growth and trajectory where now you made that designation? Can you think of 1 or 2 lessons where you might be able to have a talking point that way of, here's something that we didn't know was going to come up, but we hit this and a lesson learned?
Yeah, I think, one of those things that I feel like sticks out to me is just the idea of learning how to trust others and recognition that as an entrepreneur in some ways, you're probably only half as good at doing something as you think you are. It's this perception of turning from a practitioner into being a manager and what that transition process looks like. So I think in that for me, it was like, how do I surround myself with people that are way smarter, way more competent in their areas of expertise, and the quick recognition that you can't do everything as business grows. And but shifting that mentality takes a long time to understand that. And I think, once an entrepreneur, I think I remember reading previously that once an entrepreneur is ready to recognize that they only do something half as well as they think they do, they're probably ready to be a manager,
Yeah, that's from my interviews with different guests, they see very similar things because there's that control factor, and it's not a control factor from a manipulation standpoint. It's a control factor from, this is my baby, this is where we've grown, and I know the right way to do things, and it is so hard to let the reins loose. So was there kind of a moment, a pivotal point where you maybe let the reins go, and then you're like, oh, they didn't mess it up as bad as it could have been, and then the next time is like, well, they did a pretty darn good job, and then you kind of get comfortable with it, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think there was certainly, I think that moment happened to us in probably December to January, I guess, of 2015. In this moment where we had just we had pitched against sort of a big kind of global tech client to do a global program for them, a campaign. We had no idea at the time how big and intensive it was going to be. It was something that deployed in many countries around the world, and I think for us it was that moment of, okay, we just won this RFP that we had fought hard for in a very quick period of time, and we had beat our competition, some of which was much, a big global agency that we beat out for this particular scope of work. And it was that moment of realization of, wow, like now we actually have to execute on this thing. We painted, the vision on these ideas, and so a lot of it was about aligning the right resource set and employees that could ultimately quickly rise to the challenge, help us organize and bring to life and really execute against the vision that we'd set. So that was definitely one of those very clear moments where it's like, all right, I've got to open the pool and really be willing to trust others, in a big way.
Well, I love asking the question, what sets you apart from a competitor? So I'll ask it now in the way that you just described, which is during that RFP process, you were pitching against many competitors, some larger, smaller, whatever, but the point is they chose you. What do you feel was some of the key points that made them see you in the light that they did and say you're the obvious choice?
A great question. I think it was a couple of things. I think, part of it was in this particular pitch, we were constantly referred to as the dark horse agency. And of course, it's not our name, but no one could remember our name. So they just referred to us as, these guys, they're kind of a small boutique shop with some good ideas, but they're the dark horse because they're sort of dead last, but maybe we'll give them a shot. We'll throw them a bone. I think part of it was just pure tenacity of being able to say, hey, we're going to work faster, smarter, and come up with better ideas than our competitors in a really short period of time. We were already days behind the other competitors who were pitching on the business when we were allowed to participate in the RFP. I think the other side of it was giving them a clear recognition of what we stand for as a brand and how that relates and really understanding where they're coming from as a brand and saying, hey, we're actually connected. Our ethos is the same. Like, we believe the same things. We have the same sort of vision. We want to work with really courageous brands, and we see you as one of those that's sort of leading the way. And I think, the third part of that was recognizing that, like, as a focus of our business, that we say that we put care over commerce. And it's a hard thing when you talk to a client who's basically trying to, it's about generation sales or leads or whatever those business objectives are, but being able to authentically say, like, yeah, we believe in the care of people, the care of purpose. Like, these things are all, they trump transactions in some ways. So I think those were three of the things that maybe set us apart a little bit.
Yeah, and, I bet it kind of took the pressure off a bit when you realize, we're just going to see where the chips fall. And I think that's too many times in a sales situation, we get too tied to the outcome. And when we can see that I'm just going to put my best foot forward and say it the way that it is, I'm not going to put on airs. I'm not going to say, oh, we do something when you can't deliver. It is what it is. And then look at what that delivered. Now, did you feel like some of the things in that pitch or pitches to follow, that you're setting the bar an inch or two more higher than what it's been, knowing that you guys need to grow into that as well, which, like you alluded to in this particular case. So I'm sure you learned and acclimated and fine-tuned and honed some of your skills during that project that then you carry over to the next project and the next.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think our general motto is like swing for the fences. And there's a lot of times in this business where you not only have to sort of, clients are always asking for, show me something that's never been done before, but show me 5 examples of how you've done it for someone else, Mm-hmm. And so there's that kind of objective out there. But I do think, that is, part of it, just, being willing to swing for the fences, recognizing, hey, you're going up against giants potentially. But one idea can really change and really pivot where the client's coming from. And it just takes one spark of a great idea to be able to change the conversation. So, I think that's definitely our kind of point of view, and recognizing that oftentimes, when in a competitive landscape where oftentimes creativity is being commoditized, sometimes the best idea can truly win.
Yeah, exactly. And that fresh approach, I think, just makes you stand out, because I'm sure that if you were to kind of distill all the pitches for that particular job, there would be a lot of similarities where maybe the company was going, okay, same old, and wait a minute here, these guys. So I love that aspect of standing out. So I know you guys teach and preach a lot about branding and emotional intelligence around branding. What is can you kind of explain that, and what is the impact that emotional intelligence has around branding?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing that I think about around that conversation is it all begins with empathy, empathy on behalf of, you think about consumers or clients or partners or other brands or C-suite within an organization or employees or any partners along the way. I mean, I think there's an element of which, really intelligent and emotional branding starts with having empathy, understanding who you're connecting with and why. But I think there's also an aspect of this idea of brand declaration and recognizing that, we've kind of developed this, it's really a formula and a process by which we help brands actualize themselves. And it's kind of an esoteric kind of idea in some ways, in the same way that you might be able to actualize yourself. It's sort of the hierarchy, the pyramid of sort of needs. But we look at sort of, there's one level at the bottom of the base of the pyramid that's this sort of status kind of quo of corporate branding that exists today. But a lot of times brands just don't break past that. So, our statement and our kind of point of view is, hey, you have to first declare what you stand for. Defining your ownliness, you've got to kind of draft a manifesto of that belief system and clarify your story and messaging to kind of stake out your position, so to speak. And then the next rung of that pyramid is making it tangible or activating your brand around that. So what does that look like from a brand experience standpoint to concept those activations and like build your next campaign? And then at the very tip of that pyramid, we would say is making it truth, which very few brands arrive at this. It's sort of a moving target of a brand actualization where you've truly changed and enhanced your culture. You've engaged your employees or customers or partners, and ultimately, it's also, you're setting out to change the world. So that's kind of how we look at it, and I think that's one thing that maybe sets us apart in how we kind of look at this idea of emotional and intelligent branding.
So, where does like storytelling or telling your personal brand within a story play into that?
I think a lot of it, if I understand the question correctly, I think is, that we feel like there's a moment, a spark that every single brand began at. There was some business challenge that exists. There's a reason why, and I think going back to that sort of inception moment is a really critical part of understanding and unpacking someone's story. And there's a lot of times we run across brands today that have an incredible heritage story or an incredible story to tell about why they're doing what they're doing. They're just not leading with that. And so I think a lot of it is always ask the question of like, why should people care? Okay, so you make the world's best product, but so what? You can't just sell on features and benefits these days. So ultimately, like, why should consumers care about what you're doing? And there's some spark in your story to sort of extract that becomes this beautiful, woven narrative that we think is like the rallying cry that people will really rise up around. But I think sometimes it's about unlocking that truth. And for us, that's something we call a brand's ownliness. Like, what's the one thing they can lay claim to that no other brand can?
Yeah, I agree with you 1,000%. And it seems like so much research comes out daily. I've just seen it so recently, so many times. Jay Baer sent something out recently on personal branding and your story. You only have one brand story. We get that. But do you feel like that can change in how you deliver it based on the audience you're delivering it to?
Yeah, I absolutely do. I think that for a brand, their brand story maybe won't change, but the nuances of how they represent it to the different customer segments, it really may, just based upon their beliefs. But I think it's all about aligning the belief system in some ways of your brand with the belief system of your customers, of your consumers, And I think there will be nuances of some of those things, but I feel like there's it also has to be authentic, right? And I think there's a lot of times where brands in the past have sort of been accused of trying to invent a story about themselves. Mm-hmm. It's really not true to who they are. So I think there's a bit of a sniff test there too.
I agree with you 1,000%, and I think that maybe you can have your brand story, and you're talking to a certain person in a target audience, and you're delivering it with a certain example because you know that they love outdoors, and you're going to use an outdoorsy example in describing your brand story. So I think that just some of the examples and tip of the hat can bring that difference in, but yet everything's the same. You're not trying to be something different to one target audience than you actually are in real life. You would hate to, have them come to the office and have to change everything over because you remember you told them one thing over the other. So I think that's a huge piece. So let's talk about mission statements and, vision and mission. How does that translate into benefiting an industry as well as your community?
Yeah, I think there's a couple different ways to look at that question. First, from an industry standpoint, I look first before you look at the external application. You look at internally within the industry of advertising, for example, is an industry that's notorious for sort of kind of built on advancing untruth, so to speak, or trying to generate an engineered desire. So, I think in some ways, first, being a little bit set apart within the industry of saying, hey, we're going to stand for something. We're going to be a purpose-led organization that wants to work with courageous brands and have conviction about what we do, makes a difference. But then I think when you look, externally at how that can impact brands and community, again, I think it kind of goes back to the idea of a rallying cry and saying there's an intrinsic benefit. And I think when I look today at interviewing people, I'm always amazed in resumes we receive how many people basically are just disenfranchised. They've had years of experience in this industry, and they're like, hey, at the end of it, like, I'm just coming up short. I feel like it's soulless. It's not making a difference. And I feel like there's a new generation of young, driven, sort of Gen Y employees out there who kind of wear their heart on their sleeve. They're really passionate about change, and they recognize and see that like brands can be huge. In fact, they may have the highest impact of change in the world because of their reach, because of what they can do and how they can catalyze an audience behind an idea. And so I feel like that's another intrinsic benefit is like when you stand for something, when you have a strong mission statement and a value system and you can authentically live by it, I think you're able to attract better talent. You're able to attract clients who believe the same things you do, so that there's less rub. And by the time you're pitching an idea, they understand. Like all the heads in the room are nodding because they agree with you. And I think there's also an aspect of which, I think part of our desire is say, how do we actually add more virtue and a deeper purpose to, again, an industry that has so long subsisted off of this idea of just a consumer mentality all the time. What can I consume?
I love that approach, and I think the big thing to keep in mind is don't just take a half-day executive retreat. Create your vision and mission statements and high five and go, "Yep, got that done," and then it collects digital dust on your computers, or it's framed on the wall, and you never, refer back to it. So I think that the challenge there is to make that part of your ethos and make that part of, who you are and what you do and what you deliver, so that you're seen and defined by that, and that just, comes full circle. It's just all part of the whole package that you're delivering. I think that's a huge point.
Yeah. Well, I think.
Let's wrap up with one last question, and just what's the best way that people can engage with you and learn more about how you declare what brands stand for, and what's the best contact details for you?
Yeah, I think the best way is to visit our website. It's manifestoagency.com, and that's really the best representation of kind of what we do. Gives a little bit of our philosophy, our point of view in the world, and how to best get a hold of us if there's a project or an engagement, or if someone is looking to join us in our mission. So that's probably the best way to reach out to us.
Perfect. Well, David, thank you so much for your time. Congratulations on your Inc. 5000, and much success to you as you move forward into 2017.
Great. No, thank you so much for the time. Really appreciate it, Mike.
You've been listening to Influential Entrepreneurs with Mike Saunders. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit www.influentialentrepreneursradio.com.